Good day! My course paper goes under the title Integrating Critical Thinking Skills into the Exploration of Culture in an English as Secondary Language Setting. The 21st century can be seen as an intense conquest of the foreign languages. These days, everyone strives to learn at least one second tongue, particularly English for certain reasons. However, in fact, to know the lexicon and grammar rules of the language is not enough in practice. Since each nation pattern consists of language and cultural information package, cultural peculiarities should be also taught in order to avoid any misunderstandings. As an illustrative example, we can share the story of one teacher working at an English school in Japan. He noticed that all the Japanese workers were addressing their colleagues each time they entered and exited the office. Wishing to fit in, when he left for the night, he stood at the doorway and said something like, "See you later." His language was grammatically correct, but culturally inappropriate. A Japanese worker would never leave the office for the night with such a casual greeting, but instead with a more polite, something like, "Excuse me for leaving before you." Indubitably, this anecdote shows that linguistic competence goes only so far. Thus, in order to impart effectively and reasonably, students of a foreign language need both linguistic and intercultural competence. So nowadays, English teachers have a special responsibility to help students not only learn the language from a theoretical point of view and provide with the opportunity to practice it, but also navigate the components of culture that may not be easily visible while exploring it. Moreover, only the ability to think critically can help the students to detect cultural interaction peculiarities, perceive them correctly, and consequently resolve potential cultural misunderstandings. Therefore, the topicality of the paper consists in the establishment and popularization of the means of implementing critical thinking in the process of teaching English, which determines the methodological and linguistic interest of this paper. The goal of the paper is to detect and expound effective methods of implementing critical thinking skills into the process of teaching English as a second language, taking into consideration the cultural peculiarities. So, first of all, let's find out what is the critical thinking. This is inquiry-based learning representing the ability to think clearly and rationally, perceiving the logical connection between ideas. People with such a mechanism of mindset have the ability to focus on a question, analyze the argument, judge the credibility of a source, make and evaluate judgments, explicate and refine their perspectives, support certain viewpoints appropriately, and imaginatively suppose and integrate the logic of a viewpoint with sensitivity to others. According to one famous scientist, the world we live in is getting more complicated, and how we process information has become more important than just remembering specific facts. Thus, a critical mindset is that much important. Since the classroom does not only revolve around the language content but also around the culture and moral values, it is a great space for obtaining not only knowledge but understanding and critical thinking skills as well. Exactly due to the opportunity and need to practice lexis and grammar in live conversations, especially on serious and sensually deep themes, the students' the student's way of thinking may be expanded and become more flexible. Finally, students can perceive not only the matters on the surface, but also delve deeper into the core of pragmatics. With the support of teachers, learners must become skilled at accessing each source of information to determine its merits before using it as a reference. Particularly, their learning process should be mostly oriented at the developing of their critical skills. There are some effective strategies or so-called tools that teachers can use within the classroom to train the students' thinking, to help it become more heedful, sensitive, and objective. They are as follows: Bloom's taxonomy, questioning, mind mirrors projects, questionnaires, design thinking. So let's look closely at each of them. First of all, we have Bloom's taxonomy. The teachers should conduct the classes according to Bloom's taxonomy, which is centered on such 7 important aspects as remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, creating, that leads students from low to high order thinking. Then we have the next important tools. The teacher should ask tough, thought-provoking questions which help to dig beyond the surface and uncover a wealth of knowledge. In today's age of fast-paced, easily accessible information, it is essential to teach students how to critically examine the information they consume. Students must be taught to ask tough questions like what information is included, what or who is left out, who does word choice influence the reader, what perspective is represented, what values or people are marginalized. So questioning should be approached with an open, curious mind and a willingness to work through a series of why, what if, and how queries, because such questions force students to critically analyze the choices behind the final product. So the goal of this tactic is to equip students with the mindset to ask mind-developing questions on their own. The following tool is mind mirror projects. According to this technique, students create a mind mirror by reading a poem or any other story, then analyzing it and identifying the following key elements that represent the speaker's point of view. For example, they choose 2 quotes, 2 original statements, 2 images, and 2 symbols. Afterwards, students work in groups to create a poster that illustrates the key elements in their opinion on an outline of the speaker's head. Then these groups present their posters to the class and others should guess via clues which character is meant. So this method teaches practically how to read between the lines in order to describe a character's point of view in terms of what that character says, thinks, and does throughout a story. Furthermore, it increases students' confidence, self-awareness, and autonomy because this project prepares students to monitor and improve their critical thinking skills in future academic tasks. Then we have questionnaires. This teaching tool is commonly used activity in English language textbooks. Generally, it consists of 9 steps. Step number 1, selecting a topic and forming a group. Firstly, the teacher gives the class a choice of 3 topics from which to implement a questionnaire. Several groups choose one topic, others another. Then we should choose the questionnaire format and brainstorm about the data to be collected. Before developing the questions to ask the respondents, it is significant to decide the method of collecting the data, either through direct interviews, independent completion of the questionnaire by the respondents, or a combination of both methods. Then participants brainstorm on their topic to generate an initial list of possible questions. Step number 3. Writing the first draft. This step predicts the first draft of the questionnaire to be already completed, including the edited and then put in a logical order questions. What's interesting, in this questionnaire writing process, students should be guided by the following principles. Write questions that are clear, simple, and easy to answer, contain only one idea, and these questions should be relevant to the respondents. They should not show your biases. They should be positive in structure. Also, the teacher should use both open-ended and closed questions. Start with simple and interesting questions. Make sure that the format of the student's questionnaire is easy to follow. And then, finally, select respondents who are capable of answering the questions. Step number 4 is proofreading of the first draft by the group and the teacher. The core benefits for students in this process are practicing skimming, scanning, and creating precise written revisions. Step number 5, pilot testing the questionnaire. When the pilot respondents are completing the questionnaire, their actual outdoors observe their reactions, note their feedback, and then edit the work based on the problems that have emerged. For instance, there may be a few questions that some respondents cannot understand. It shows that these questions should be explained in simpler terms. Briefly, this experience gives the students and teachers even more practice in clarifying their language. Step number 6, revising the final draft. Step number 7, administering the questionnaire. Members of the group hand out many, at least 100% questionnaires to teachers working in different private language institutions and approximately the same amount of questionnaires to students in the same institution. Step number 8, summarizing the data and interpreting the results. And finally, step number 9, writing a final report. Eventually, the results should be written up in a final report, including a literature review. Ideally, students also have to present their results to the class. Making this kind of classroom presentation would be valuable in developing public speaking skills. Overall, conducting the questionnaire is indeed a time-consuming and labor-intense activity, but its benefits are especially enumerate and effective. So then we have design thinking. It is a process that helps to develop creative and practical solutions for certain problems. It is a human-focused, prototype-driven, innovative design process initially conceived for young students and later has been used successfully around the world with students of all ages and backgrounds. Some essential qualities of a design thinking mindset includes the belief that mistakes lead to new knowledge, that we should go ahead and try a new idea rather than wait for ideal circumstances before trying, and that we should learn how to cope with discomfort while staying comfortable. In conclusion, the goal of critical thinking is to learn a way to think more deeply, solve problems better, communicate constructively, collaborate, and innovate more effectively in our personal as well as organizational lives. This skill is developed naturally over the course of study as students learn to scrutinize evidence and dissect opposing arguments. Furthermore, applying the aforementioned strategies in the language learning process via exploring the cultures, it makes the learned material more useful, comprehensible, and relatable, boosting the efficacy of the lesson and making it as engaging and long-term beneficial for students as possible. So, thank you very much for your attention. Please train your mind, develop your critical thinking, stay in touch with reality. Thank you. Goodbye.